The rain started the moment they lowered Mira's coffin. It wasn't the gentle kind. It came in sheets, cold and angry, turning the ground into mud. People opened black umbrellas like flowers made of grief. I didn't bother. I just stood there, letting it hit my face. I'd known Mira for 3 years, loved her for 2, lived with her for 1. She used to say rain made her feel alive again. I never understood that, until that day. When everyone left, I stayed behind. The cemetery emptied except for one woman, standing by the gate, watching me. She didn't have an umbrella either. Her hair, wet and dark like Mira's, stuck to her cheeks. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. Then she walked closer, and my heart froze. She looked exactly like Mira. Same eyes, same small scar under the left one, same tired kindness around the mouth. "I'm Lena," she said softly, "Mira's twin." I didn't know Mira had a twin. She'd never mentioned it. We met again a week later, at a cafe near the river. Lena wore the same wool coat Mira used to love, the gray one with the missing button. She said she found it when she went through Mira's things. "She always talked about this place," she said. Her voice was lower than Mira's, steadier, but it had that same rhythm when she said my name. "Eli," she said, and it was like hearing Mira again. She smiled when she saw me staring. She said, "People always looked at her first. Now they look at me like they've seen a ghost." I laughed awkwardly, though something in her tone made my stomach tighten. When we left, she touched my arm lightly, the way Mira used to, when she wanted me to stay a little longer. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the apartment reminded me of footsteps that should have been hers. Lena started visiting often. She said she wanted to know who her sister had been. We went through Mira's things together. Her sketches, her books, the half-finished painting leaning against the wall. "She never finished this one," I said. Lena tilted her head. She never finished a lot of things. Sometimes when she stood by the window with her back to me, I'd forget it wasn't Mira. Her movements, even her size, they were too similar. Once I caught her humming in the kitchen. It was the same melody Mira used to hum when she cooked. When I asked how she knew it, she smiled and said, "Maybe we shared more than blood." There was something strange about the way she said that, but I let it go. I didn't want to lose this echo of Mira. By spring, we were inseparable. People whispered, of course. Her family didn't approve. My friends avoided the subject. I told myself it wasn't wrong, that grief had no rules. Lena said the same. "Maybe she brought us together," she whispered one night, her hand trembling in mine. "She wouldn't want you alone." It felt like a promise, or maybe a confession. For a while, things were peaceful. We laughed again, cooked in silence, walked by the river at dusk. The apartment didn't feel haunted anymore. Until one night, I woke to the sound of humming. It was that same tune again, but it was coming from the hallway. Lena was asleep beside me. Her breathing was steady, deep. I turned on the lamp. The light flickered, then steadied. The humming stopped. In the morning, I found the painting, Mira's unfinished one, turned around, its face to the wall. Neither of us had touched it. Lena began to change after that. She grew distant, restless. Sometimes she'd stare into the mirror for minutes, whispering under her breath. Once I heard her say, "I'm not her." When I asked who she meant, she just smiled too brightly and said, "You know who." She started wearing Mira's clothes, the same dresses, the same perfume. It smelled like gardenia and something faintly sweet, like sugar left too long on a windowsill. When I told her it made me uneasy, she laughed. "You loved her scent. Why not mine?" It wasn't the same. It was stronger, almost suffocating. And yet I didn't stop her. I couldn't. Then came the night of the storm. The power went out. The apartment filled with the sound of rain again. Hard, endless. I lit a candle. Lena stood by the window, staring out into the dark street. "She's out there," she whispered. I asked who. She said, "Mira, she keeps calling me." Her voice shook. I told her to come away from the window, but she didn't move. The candle flickered, and for a moment her reflection in the glass wasn't hers. It smiled when she didn't. I reached for her arm. She turned suddenly, eyes wide, voice breaking. "She wants me to finish what she couldn't." The candle went out. When the lights came back, Lena was gone. The front door was open. The rain had stopped. I searched everywhere, the street, the riverbank, the old cemetery. Nothing. The police called it a disappearance. They said grief makes people do strange things. I moved out a month later. But before I left, I found something on the easel. The painting, Mira's unfinished one, was complete now. Two women stood by a window in the rain. One looked outside. The other smiled behind her, her hand on the glass. Their faces were the same. Sometimes when it rains, I hear humming again. Faint, from the next room. And every time I turn toward it, there's only one reflection in the window now. We met in the garden behind St. Mary's on a summer afternoon that smelled of mint and damp earth. I was helping the caretaker pull weeds along the fence. She was painting the old gate, her dress splattered white and green. "Careful," she said, laughing, "the vines bite." Her name was June. She had that soft, unhurried way of speaking that made everything sound like a secret. I asked her what she was painting for. She said it was for her sister's wedding. I didn't tell her I didn't believe in weddings. Not yet. The paint on her hands dried in small cracks, and she kept rubbing her thumb over one spot until the skin turned pink. That was the first thing I noticed about her, that quiet persistence. We shared lemonade under the walnut tree when the sun got low. She said she liked the smell of soil after rain. I told her I liked the way she said it. That was how it started. June was the kind of person who left small things behind. A hair clip on my dashboard, a book on my porch, a half-empty cup of tea that always went cold before she finished it. She lived 2 towns over, worked nights at a floral shop. Sometimes when I visited, the place smelled of roses and mold. She said the smell lingered in her skin, that she couldn't wash it off. I remember once asking her why she never took her wedding ring off, even though she wasn't married. She smiled, turning it slowly on her finger. "It keeps me from forgetting," she said. I didn't ask what. There was a small crack in the ring, barely visible. I traced it once with my thumb and felt a chill run through me, as if the metal were colder than it should have been. We married a year later, quietly, just the 2 of us, in the garden behind St. Mary's. She wore a cream dress with a torn hem. We buried our vows under the walnut tree, wrapped in ribbon and wax paper, because she said love should feed the roots. "It'll last longer this way," she whispered. I believed her. We moved into a small house by the edge of town. It had uneven floors and a front porch that creaked whenever she walked across it. June loved it, said it sounded alive. For a while, it felt like we were too. That summer was the happiest I've ever been. We stayed up late, listening to cicadas, our feet tangled in thin sheets. She hummed when she couldn't sleep. Always the same tune, low and wordless. I recorded it once on an old cassette tape. She laughed and called me sentimental, but a week later she started coughing at night. By August, her voice was gone. The doctors called it pneumonia. I called it something else. Her skin turned pale, her lips dry. She said she could still smell the soil, even from her bed. Said it was calling her back. I tried to pray, though I never believed in much. One night, she woke me with a whisper. She said, "Promise me, if I go, you'll dig up what we buried. Don't let it rot down there." I promised. She smiled, turned her ring one last time, and closed her eyes. I buried her beside the walnut tree. The caretaker from St. Mary's came, old and quiet. He said she'd painted that gate every year since her sister died. No one told me she'd had a twin. The ground was hard, even in spring. When the service ended, I stayed, running my fingers through the damp soil. The roots were thicker now, tangled deep. At night, I heard her humming again, soft at first, then closer. The cassette tape played by itself, once rewound, clicked and started. When I checked, it was blank. A month passed before I went back to the garden. The grass had grown tall, almost covering the spot. I brought a small spade and a lantern. The dirt smelled sweet, almost metallic. When the blade hit something solid, I thought it was the jar we had buried, but the sound was dull, heavy. I brushed away the soil and saw wood, dark and swollen. Her coffin. I froze. I hadn't dug that deep. Something had pushed it up from below. My hands were shaking when I found the jar beside it, half cracked, ribbons still tied. The paper inside was damp, but intact. Our vows. I unwrapped them with care. Her handwriting had bled into the paper, the ink spreading like veins. She had written something new beneath her promise. "Don't forget me when the roots wake." Then the humming started again. It came from inside the coffin. I dropped the jar. The glass shattered against a stone. The humming grew louder, more desperate. The soil trembled. I ran. I left town the next morning, sold the house, burned the tape. But the smell followed me, the faint sweetness of soil after rain. Last week, a package arrived with no return address. Inside was the jar, cleaned and sealed, and her ring. There was dirt under it, fresh, damp. Now every night I hear knocking from the garden outside my new window. 3 slow taps like someone testing the earth. And sometimes I think I hear her humming along with the wind. Some promises never die. They just wait for you to dig them up.
I met Leo on a cold morning in late November. The wind coming off the lake smelled of rust and pine, and he offered me his jacket before I even told him my name. "You look like you're freezing," he said, holding it out with that crooked grin that made him seem both kind and a little dangerous. It was a faded brown corduroy jacket, soft at the cuffs, warm in the lining. I slipped it on, and it fit almost perfectly. It smelled faintly of smoke and rain. He told me he worked at the boatyard, fixing old motors and patching hulls. I was just passing through town then, renting a room above a bakery, trying to forget someone else. We started meeting at the dock every evening when the water turned dark and the gulls went quiet. I don't know when it changed from friendship to something else, only that by the time the first snow fell, I was already his. Leo lived in a small cabin by the woods. It wasn't much, just a stove, a cot, and stacks of books about the sea. He said he liked simple things. "Too many people fill their lives with noise," he told me once. "I just want quiet that feels alive." Sometimes, when he couldn't sleep, he'd go outside and listen to the trees. He said they whispered at night. I laughed at him the first time he said it. He didn't laugh back. There was a patch sewn into the inside of his jacket, a small, uneven heart shape done in dark thread. I asked who stitched it. "My mother," he said. "She said it keeps the heart close." When I touched it, the fabric felt warm, like it remembered someone. We moved in together after New Year's. I brought my books and my coffee mugs. He brought silence and strange habits, like knocking twice on the door before coming in, even when he knew I was alone. We built a life that was small but whole. Mornings smelled of pine and coffee. Evenings glowed with oil lamps and quiet music from an old radio. One night, he gave me the jacket again. "Keep it," he said. "You look better in it than I ever did." I kissed him and promised I would. That was the last time I saw him alive. The storm came suddenly. The wind tore across the lake, and the waves rose higher than I'd ever seen. Leo went out anyway, said he needed to help secure the boats before they broke free. I waited by the window all night. The lights flickered and the radio hissed. Around midnight, the sound of the wind changed. It almost sounded like his voice calling from the shore. When they found the wrecked boat 2 days later, his body wasn't in it. They told me the lake sometimes doesn't give things back. I couldn't let go of the jacket. I wore it everywhere, in bed, in the kitchen. Even when I showered, I'd hang it on the hook where I could see it. It still smelled like him, still felt like him. But sometimes, when I woke up in the dark, it didn't lie flat beside me. The fabric seemed to rise as if it had been draped over someone breathing. I told myself it was my imagination, grief playing tricks, until I felt it. One night, as I drifted to sleep, I felt a soft pressure around my shoulders, gentle, like someone's arm. The fabric tightened. The collar brushed my neck. I froze. The air smelled of salt and rain. I whispered his name. The sleeve moved. The days blurred after that. The jacket grew heavier, as if soaked from within. When I hung it up, it swayed slightly, though the windows were closed. Once I caught it slumped over at the chair by the fire, one sleeve draped across the table the way Leo used to sit. I started talking to it, softly, like I used to talk to him. "Are you cold?" I'd ask. The fabric would quiver. A small sound began following me, a faint creak, like wood shifting under weight. I found marks on the floor near the chair, scuff lines, shaped like bare feet. One morning, the patch inside the jacket was gone. The stitching had come undone, threads hanging loose like veins. The lining, where it used to be, was damp, not with water, something thicker, faintly metallic. I tried to burn it, took it to the fire pit behind the cabin, laid it down and struck a match. The flame went out. Every time. Even when I poured kerosene, it wouldn't catch. Then I heard it. His knock. 2 soft taps on the cabin door. When I turned, the jacket was gone from the pit. I found it later, neatly folded at the foot of the bed. That night, I put it on again. The fabric clung to me, warm at first, then cold. I could feel something inside it, something shifting slowly along my back, a breath that wasn't mine. I stood before the mirror and whispered, "If you're here, show me." The reflection didn't move when I did. It just smiled. His smile, not mine. The next morning, I woke to find soil scattered across the floor. Damp, dark soil. It led from the front door to the chair by the fire. I followed it. Outside. To the lake. There, half buried in the sand, was Leo's ring, the one he always wore when he worked. The jacket's cuff brushed my wrist as if pointing at it. I picked up the ring and slipped it into the pocket. The fabric pulsed, once, softly, like a heartbeat. I still wear the jacket. It doesn't fit the same anymore. It's heavier, tighter, alive in the quiet way grief is alive. Sometimes, when I walk by the lake, it tightens around me, as if it wants to pull me closer to the water. And when the wind picks up, I hear his voice behind me, gentle as before. Cold, love? I told you I'd keep you warm. I think he kept his promise. Now I just wonder how long I'll keep mine.